Germany has had a long and complex relationship with its black population. While there were a significant number of black people in Germany in the 18th century, their population gradually decreased over time, resulting in few or no Afro-Germans in some parts of the country. However, there are still substantial Afro-German communities in cities such as Hamburg and Frankfurt, which were formerly centers of occupation forces following World War II, as well as more recent immigration. The Afro-German community has a rich and diverse history in Germany, with its roots stretching back several centuries. However, this community has also faced significant challenges and discrimination throughout German history. From being enslaved and exhibited in human zoos in the 19th century to being persecuted by the Nazis during World War II, Afro-Germans have faced various forms of marginalization and exclusion. In this video, we'll delve deeper into the factors that contributed to the decline of the Afro-German population in Germany and how the country has addressed these issues in recent years. We'll also discuss the challenges faced by Afro-Germans and explore how they have contributed to German society and culture. So make sure to stay with us till the end. The history of Afro-Germans can be traced back to the late 17th century when Frederick William, a Grand Elector of Brandenburg, Prussia, founded the Brandenburg African Compartment in 1682. He also ordered the establishment of a fort on the coast of present-day Ghana to rival Europe's great sea powers. The fort was named Groby Friedrichsburg and was designed to serve as a point of departure for the German slave trade. Years later, German slave ships transported thousands of African slaves, some of whom ended up on the slave market of St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. St. Thomas is known to be the most prominent slave market in the world. Africans were brought as slaves from the western coast of Africa, where many German estates were established, primarily on the Gold Coast. In 1709, 12 Negro boys were brought from the western part of Africa, 6 of whom were decorated with golden chains and presented to the king. These enslaved children were later bought by their new masters and taken to Potsdam and Berlin. King Friedrich Wilhelm I of Prussia later sold his Ghanaian Groby Friedrichsburg estates situated in Africa in 1717. Well, during this period, slaves were traded for German linen fabrics and interracial couples were pressured. Before World War I, thousands of black people lived in Germany, some of whom came from Africa, North and South America, and the Caribbean. However, the First World War limited international travel and migration in 1914, and the Germans imposed strict migration rules. Some who had traveled to the country for business purposes only stayed for a while and then left before the war commenced. After World War I ended, the immigrants who were still in the country could not leave because they had no passports or travel documents. Hence, they were stranded in the country, and many faced challenges in integrating into German society. They were often seen as others and were subjected to discrimination, racial prejudice, and exclusion. Additionally, during the Nazi regime, Afro-Germans, like other non-Aryan groups, were targeted for extermination, leading to the deaths of many Afro-Germans. Despite these challenges, Afro-Germans have contributed significantly to German society and culture. They have enriched German music, arts, and sports, and have advocated for social justice and human rights. The erasure of Afro-Germans in Germany was a gradual process that occurred over several years, though, with the Nazi regime being a key contributor to their decline in population. The Nazis rose to power in Germany in the 1930s, led by Hitler. They were known for their extreme nationalism, racism, and totalitarianism, seeking to establish a fascist state based on these ideals. Before the Nazi regime, several thousand blacks were living in Germany. However, when the Nazis came into power, they began harassing and persecuting them. The Nazi regime promoted the idea of Aryan supremacy and aimed to purify the German population through eugenics and racial policies. Non-Aryans, including Jews, Roma, Sinti, homosexuals, disabled individuals, and people of African descent, were considered inferior and targeted for exclusion and persecution. Well, as the Nazis' policies became more extreme, they created laws that made most black people end up in prisons, hospitals, psychiatric facilities, and concentration camps. Many Afro-Germans were also forcibly conscripted into the German military during the war, and those who fought on the front lines faced additional discrimination and mistreatment. Some Afro-German soldiers were sent to the Eastern Front, where they were treated particularly harshly by their fellow soldiers and subjected to brutal conditions. As a result, many Afro-Germans died during this period, which was one of the reasons that led to their decline in population. One of the most significant laws passed by the Nazi regime was the Nuremberg race laws, which were declared in September 1935. These laws were initially put in place to target Jews, but in November 1935, they were also extended to affect Black and Roma people. These laws classified those of non-Aryan descent as Untermenschen, a derogatory term meaning subhuman. The first Nuremberg law was also known as the Reich Citizenship Law, which stated that a German citizen was of German origin or related by blood. This law was aimed at excluding non-Aryans from political rights in Germany. The second law was for the protection of German blood and German honor, which banned race mixing, also known as race defilement. The law forbade intermarriage or sexual relations between Germans and those of related blood. The Nuremberg race laws made it difficult for Black people in Germany to marry or build a future. Despite the laws against interracial couples, some Blacks who were romantically engaged to German Aryans got married. However, the relationship was dangerous for both partners. The law pressured white German women to divorce their Black husbands because they felt the presence of Afro-Germans was a threat to their racial purity. As a matter of fact, the hostility towards Black Germans can be traced back to Germany's colonial past. Many Germans believed that people of African descent were inferior and unworthy of equal treatment. When Hitler rose to power in 1933, the situation for Black Germans became even worse. The Nazis believed in a concept of racial purity, where the Aryan race was seen as superior to all others. Anyone who did not fit into this narrow definition of what it meant to be German was seen as a threat. Bernhard Dernberg, the German director for colonial affairs, made a derogatory statement about some native tribes and compared them to animals that needed to be destroyed. This kind of rhetoric was used to justify the exclusion and persecution of Black Germans. Black children were excluded from schools and faced criticism from their parents and peers. They were left feeling isolated and excluded from society. They wanted to be part of the German excitement, but were denied that opportunity. Discrimination against Black school children was a local initiative at first, but things got worse when the Nazis took control of schooling and enforced formal bans against Black students. The Nazi law completely banned Jewish children from attending German public schools. This policy had a devastating effect on the education and future prospects of Black German children. The Nazi regime also implemented a wicked strategy of forced sterilization to persecute Black Germans. They forcibly sterilized multiracial children in Rhineland to prevent race mixing. Black men were seen as a threat to the strength and purity of the Aryan race, and sterilization was a way to make them unable to have children. The Nazis announced the law for the prevention of offspring with hereditary diseases in 1933, which was a bid to prevent race mixing. About 400,000 people were sterilized during this period. Moreover, Ferdinand Allen, who was the son of a Black British father and a white German mother, was forcibly sterilized by court order in May 1941. Allen was later murdered at Bernburg by the Nazis following their T4 program. The T4 program was a Nazi policy involving the involuntary euthanasia of people with physical and mental disabilities. The program also targeted other groups deemed unworthy of life, including Afro-Germans. Well, the T4 program had a significant impact on the decline of Afro-Germans because it allowed for the forced sterilization and murder of those who were considered racially inferior. In conclusion, the persecution of Black Germans during the Nazi regime was a tragic and often overlooked chapter in history. The racist policies and rhetoric of the Nazi government sought to exclude and eliminate anyone who did not fit into their narrow definition of what it meant to be German. The T4 program and forced sterilization were just some of the ways that Afro-Germans were targeted for elimination. It is important to remember and honor the memory of those who suffered during this dark period in history, and to continue to fight against racism and discrimination in all its forms. With new discoveries and hidden secrets about Black history waiting to be uncovered, you won't want to miss out on the next episode. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and let us know what you think in the comment section down below. Till next time, take care.